So today I want to talk about the power of habitat, specifically the influence, the importance of habitat on your health. And health is a pretty important issue these days. In the developed world, there's been this huge increase in chronic health conditions: obesity, diabetes, autoimmune conditions, depression. And so it's a really important issue. But a lot of people fail when they try to change their lifestyle and their habits to actually prevent these conditions. And I think a major reason why a lot of people fail is they actually place all of the effort and importance on changing themselves, on saying, new year, new you, January 1st, suddenly, bam, I'm going to make a resolution and I will be a healthier person. But most of the foods in the refrigerator stay the same. They sleep in the same bed. They're married to the same spouse. They have the same boss, the same car, the same office. Everything around them is the same. And so is it really a surprise that a lot of these folks fail at trying to change themselves? So what is a habitat, right? So when most people hear that word, they think of a wild ecosystem like a coral reef or a rainforest or a desert, something out in the wild where different types of organisms flourish. But I want to challenge you to expand your notion of what a habitat is. A habitat could be the gardens at the Palace of Versailles. A habitat could be your mouth, which is home to millions of bacteria. A habitat could be New York City, where I live. And really, your habitat is everything in your life that isn't you. It is your bedroom. It's the light that gets into your bedroom. It's the foods in the refrigerator. It's whether you have a grocery store near you. It's your friends. It's your social network. It's your boss. It's everything that isn't you. And your habitat is extremely important and influential. In the long run, your habitat is the difference, not your habitat, a habitat is the difference between, say, a bat and a whale. Two mammals, over millions of years, living in different spaces with different challenges and opportunities, and the importance of habitat through the process of evolution by natural selection results in mammals with completely different bodily forms. And as creatures become adapted to their habitat, to their ecological niche, their body, our bodies, are literally a reflection, an echo of the habitats in which we evolved. Now, on shorter time scales, just in the life of a single organism or a single human being, habitat is incredibly influential as well. And to illustrate that, I want to tell you a little story about a guy named Michael, who is a medical curiosity. Now, his story starts simply enough, commonly enough, lives in Cleveland, middle-aged, 70 pounds overweight, terrible blood work, some behavioral issues, some mental health challenges, and signs of heart disease. So the doctor does what a doctor would do for anybody with these conditions and puts Michael on 2 blood pressure medications and looks into ways to change his lifestyle. Now, everything that I've told you is true except for 2 things. Michael's name is actually Makolo, and Makolo is a western lowland gorilla at the Cleveland Zoo. And so I went on a field trip to the zoo to learn about how zookeepers keep animals healthy in captivity. And surprisingly to me, heart disease is the #1 killer of male gorillas in captivity. Heart disease is also the #1 killer of males in civilization. So I wanted to know, what can we start to learn from zoos about human health? So I went there, amazing team. The zookeepers really care a lot about the animals, and they wanted to prevent these types of conditions. And it's not inevitable that a middle-aged man goes into cardiac arrest and dies, and it's not inevitable that a 21-year-old gorilla goes into cardiac arrest and drops dead. So what did they do? Well, they looked at Makolo's habitat, his enclosure. They knew it probably wouldn't work to try to get Makolo to count calories or to do Weight Watchers. And in fact, it wouldn't work with any animal in the zoo. Stupid animals don't even know how to count. But we're the fat ones. And so what did they do? Well, they looked at Makolo's habitat, not just his diet, but the light, the sound, microorganisms, the surfaces, movement, social interactions with other gorillas in the enclosure. Now, of course, they focused on diet the most because it's a good bet that that's implicated in heart problems and potentially being overweight. And so what was Makolo eating? Makolo was actually eating a plant-based diet, fruits and vegetables supplemented with what are called gorilla biscuits. And in the morning, Makolo would get a big bucket of gorilla biscuits. I would describe gorilla biscuits as fiber bars from hell. I've had one. They are dry and bland and chalky and not delicious. I don't recommend it. But that's what they would munch on. And now, of course, gorillas in the wild don't eat gorilla biscuits. And it's a misnomer. And the zookeepers know this. So why would a responsible primatologist actually use these gorilla biscuits? Well, it was actually an improvement upon what animals used to be fed in zoos throughout as long as zoos have existed. In fact, in the 1960s at the Dallas Zoo, on a daily basis, the gorilla diet included Jell-O and horse meat, and along with some vegetables and some other foods like that. And we can all chuckle about Dallas, but it was actually fairly common, even at the best zoos around the world, to have things like bread or meat, eggs, and at some point in histories, in some locations, even things like candy and alcohol. And that seems crazy to us today, but that is just it didn't. This change was really radical in terms of mimicking the natural habitat of a species at zoos. So what did they do with Makolo? They shifted Makolo's diet to they reduced the amount of fruit, they got rid of the gorilla biscuits, and they just basically fed Makolo a ton of leafy plants and vegetables. And measured by caloric intake, strictly, Makolo started eating twice as many calories as he had previously. And over the course of about a year, Makolo lost 70 pounds, which is about 15% of his body mass. The progression of heart disease stopped in the scans that they were doing. His blood work improved, behavioral problems went away, and it was a miracle that seems obvious in retrospect. And if you go back and look at some of these zoo enclosures from most of the 20th century, and even many still today, they really look like jail cells. You know, I wish I could show you an amazing picture of the rhinos at the Berlin Zoo in the 1960s. And it's completely sterile, concrete floors, metal bars, and they're on like little pedestals, or they're each in their own slot, as if they were stamps on display. And there's a snow leopard in 1906 at the Bronx Zoo. The Bronx Zoo and the Berlin Zoo are two of the best zoos in the entire world. And so they were on the cutting edge. These were well-funded places with top people working there. A snow leopard in a sterile enclosure, concrete, bars, tiny window. Now, again, you need to understand why people did things. These types of enclosures were easier to sterilize, and infectious disease was a major health threat to these animals in captivity. It was only the late 19th century when we started to learn about when we started to learn about the germ theory of disease. So as this revolution in zoos started to really get underway in the 1970s. And now it's considered common sense in the zoo world that if you want to prevent chronic health conditions, you mimic the natural habitat of the species. And that includes everything from food to movement patterns to social interactions to UV to microorganisms in the soil to all sorts of different things. So when we think about our own habitats in our lives, your bedroom, your refrigerator, your office, your gym, your car, if we do not literally redesign and change these spaces, we will not become healthier. We will not solve these problems. It is not enough to use willpower and discipline to suddenly magically turn into other people. We are, to a large extent, not entirely, but to a large extent, the product of our habitat, our spaces, our social relationships. And so if we want to flourish as human beings, we need to realize that, and we need to change the physical spaces and how we live. And today you're going to be hearing about a lot of different people with amazing visions for human life on a lot of cool radical frontiers, whether it's free cities or floating cities, or maybe we go underwater, or we go to Mars and do a colony on Mars. And we should do these things. But what we should also keep in mind as we push to those frontiers is we should also remember where we come from and our original natural habitat. So, thank you.